August 23, 2003. 7:30 a.m. Aurora, Colorado. 19-year-old Casey McLeod walks out of her family's home, dressed for work, expecting nothing more than a regular shift at the local Subway sandwich shop. She never makes it there. Her absence sends quiet ripples of worry through her family. But those ripples would grow into waves, dark, heavy, and devastating, when hours turn into days, and Casey still hasn't returned. For years, there are no answers. Just questions. Silent phone lines. Dead-end leads. And a mother clinging to the hope that her daughter might still be alive. Then, in 2007, deep in the woods of Jackson County, a hunter stumbles upon something chilling. Human remains. DNA confirms the unthinkable, it's Casey. But that discovery is only the beginning. The truth is far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The man last seen with Casey? Scott Lee Kimball. A man who once claimed to be an FBI agent. A man who was dating Casey's mother. A man trusted and protected. What investigators would uncover about Kimball would shock even seasoned agents. A con artist. A killer. And somehow, an informant for the very agency meant to stop men like him. So how did Scott Kimball manage to operate in the shadows, right under the government's nose? And how many lives did he destroy along the way? This is the haunting story of Casey McLeod. And the serial killer who was hiding in plain sight. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, this is a case you won't forget. Casey McLeod was more than a missing person case. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman with dreams, someone who brought light into the lives of those around her. Born to Lori and Rob McLeod, Casey was their only child. And to them, she was everything. She was the kind of girl who loved music, who danced in the kitchen, who laughed a little louder than everyone else. Her energy filled a room. Her presence was magnetic. But like many teenagers, Casey faced struggles. In her case, it was addiction. Drugs had pulled her into dark places, tested her spirit, and strained her relationships. But Casey was trying to turn things around. By the summer of 2003, she was clean. She had moved back in with her mom, Lori, and was beginning to piece her life back together. She had a new job at Subway, she was reconnecting with family, and, most importantly, she was hopeful. It wasn't a perfect life. But it was a second chance. And Casey was grabbing it with both hands. August 23, 2003. It was a quiet morning in Aurora, Colorado. Casey McLeod was scheduled to work the morning shift at Subway. Her uniform was ready, her bag was packed, and she was supposed to get a ride from someone her mother trusted. Scott Kimball. At the time, Scott was Lori McLeod's boyfriend. He told her he worked for the FBI. Claimed he was undercover. Claimed he was the good guy. That morning, Kimball said he couldn't drive Casey after all. He told Lori he was heading out on a last-minute hunting trip. So Casey left. And never came back. Hours passed. Then the entire day. Casey wasn't home by evening. She wasn't answering her phone. And that's when Lori knew something was wrong. She went to the police. But the response wasn't what she expected. Because of Casey's age, 19, and her past history of running away, officers didn't treat it as urgent. To them, it looked like another teenage disappearance. A rebellious phase. Nothing more. But Lori knew better. She knew her daughter. Casey had made promises to stay clean, to be reliable, to build a better life. And Lori believed her. Still, there was no formal missing persons report. No search party. No Amber Alert. Just silence. And a mother, waiting by the door. In the early days, the investigation into Casey McLeod's disappearance barely moved. With no signs of a struggle, no immediate evidence of foul play, and Casey's history of running away, authorities saw little urgency. They waited. Days passed. Then weeks. And Scott Kimball? He played the part. He told Lori he was working undercover for the FBI. He claimed to be using government resources to help find Casey. He reassured her. Comforted her. Lied to her. And then, he manipulated the story. One day, Casey's necklace suddenly appeared, hanging on the doorknob of her bedroom. It hadn't been there before. To Lori, it was a sign. A chilling one. And that was the point. Kimball had planted it. A calculated move to make it seem like Casey had returned on her own. Like she was still alive. Somewhere. Out there. But beneath the surface, things weren't adding up. Kimball's story kept changing. And slowly, suspicion started to rise. Especially when investigators realized something deeply troubling. Scott Kimball was the last known person to see Casey McLeod alive. And he wasn't who he claimed to be. It wasn't a murder investigation that finally brought Scott Kimball back into focus. It was fraud. In 2006, the FBI began digging into a string of financial crimes tied to Kimball: embezzlement, forgery, and fraudulent loans. But what they found went far beyond money. As investigators sifted through Kimball's activities, a disturbing pattern emerged: multiple missing persons, all of whom had some connection to him. Among them was Casey McLeod. Then came the receipt. It placed Kimball in Walden, Colorado, near Route National Forest, right around the time Casey vanished in 2003. He had always claimed he'd been out hunting. Now, that alibi had a location. Investigators followed the trail. And what they uncovered changed everything. Deep in the woods, near an old campsite, a hunter had discovered human remains, a skull. It had been lying there, exposed to the elements. Forgotten. Until now. Forensic analysis confirmed what Lori McLeod feared most. The remains belonged to her daughter. Casey was dead. And the man who had comforted her mother, who said he was working to find her, had led investigators straight to her final resting place. It was the beginning of the end for Scott Kimball. In 2006, Scott Kimball was finally arrested, but not for murder. Not yet. At the time, it was fraud that brought him down. A string of financial crimes: forging checks, stealing money, manipulating identities. It was a web of deception he'd spun for years. But behind that web, investigators were uncovering something far darker. As the fraud case deepened, so did the suspicions. Kimball's name kept surfacing in connection to several missing persons, Casey McLeod among them. The more they looked, the more they found. By 2009, the evidence was undeniable. Kimball struck a plea deal. He admitted to 4 murders, including the killing of Casey McLeod. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 70 years in prison. During the proceedings, a disturbing truth came to light: Scott Kimball had committed these crimes while acting as a paid informant for the FBI. He was trusted by federal agents. Paid by them. And all the while, he was using that position to manipulate victims, evade scrutiny, and cover his tracks. The case sent shockwaves through the justice system, raising hard questions about how someone so dangerous could have been empowered by the very agency meant to stop him. For Casey's family, it wasn't justice. But it was, at least, a reckoning. The story of Casey McLeod is one that leaves a scar. A young woman, full of promise, trying to rebuild her life, taken by someone her family trusted. Someone who stood beside her mother. Someone who said he was there to help. Scott Kimball didn't just manipulate his victims, he manipulated the system. He used the title of FBI informant as a shield. A tool. A mask. And somehow, it worked. Long enough for lives to be lost. Casey was one of them. Though the case is officially closed, the questions it raised remain. How was Kimball able to operate so freely under federal watch? What failed? And what protections should exist to keep predators like him from hiding behind a badge? There are no easy answers. But what we do know is this: Casey McLeod deserved more. More time. More protection. More justice. We share her story not to reopen wounds, but to remember. To reflect. And to ask the questions that still matter. What do you think? Should the FBI be held accountable for how they handled Scott Kimball? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more true crime cases that deserve to be told.